We spend more waking hours at work than anywhere else. What we experience at work, we bring home with us. There is research on emotional contagion that shows that, our levels of well-being and happiness spreads up to 3 degrees of separation. So when we are at work, if we experience meaning at work, we bring that home with us. That impacts our friends, our family, our community. So then the way we define meaningful work is really around the 3 C's. And this is work that builds community, helps you contribute to something that matters, and challenges you to learn and grow. So community, contribution, and challenge. And then another way that people confuse meaningful work is...
We're going to have a conversation today about meaningful work, your book, which has come out. It's a phenomenal book. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things that are fun. I wanted to start with positive psychology. I'm always interested in anytime psychology has the word positive in front of it, it makes me excited. And I love this study. I love the differences and the nuances of positive psychology. How has positive psychology impacted you in your work?
Gosh, in so many ways. So me personally, when I was in graduate school getting a master's in applied positive psychology, was when COVID hit. So having those tools, having the knowledge and the science behind it was just so helpful to navigate it with 3 young kids. At the time, my kids were in 8th, 7th, and 5th grades, and they were my research subjects. I had like a little N of 3 lab in my home, and I was doing all kinds of experiments and trying different things. And, I was not only studying resilience at the time, but then teaching resilience skills. And so it really, it was transformative in my personal life. And then in my work life, I think was an evolution and a way of like naming. Sometimes, it's about having language to describe what you already believe in or what things you already do. And part of it was that for me, because in my work as a productivity consultant, it was never about like, let's do more in less time and that hustle culture and all of that. But it was, how do we do more of the things that matter in the time that we have, and exploring things like that. And then really being able to dive into the study and application of meaningful work really has transformed my business, led to my second book. And so it's been a great evolution.
What you probably didn't know at the time was how impactful all that resilience training would be, especially for your 8th grader who is now a freshman in college. Is that right? Sophomore in college. Okay. So that's my son as well. I have 2 boys, 16 and 19, but the 19-year-old is a sophomore in college. And that COVID transition to high school was severely impactful for their development. And I just see a whole generation of kids who are uniquely different in what they were exposed to than maybe how I grew up or how you grew up. I know in 8th grade was like, you're like the king of the middle school, and then you go to high school, and my kid was like moving through, they did everything on their own. And then they went to like halfway school. Like it was almost open, then it wasn't open.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so impactful. I bet those lessons have really paid off for them in school now, huh?
One of the stories that I tell when I'm teaching resilience skills, and we're talking about, one of the cognitive skills of resilience, like optimistic thinking, right? I tell the story about our dinner table when we got the call from the superintendent in March saying that the school was going to be closed for 2 weeks. So it was like one of those automated pre-recorded calls. I put it on speaker, and it's me and my husband and our 3 kids sitting around the table. And so my daughter, Bella, who was in 8th grade at the time, was crushed. She was like, no, I'm never going to see my friends. Oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. My son, Eddie, who was in 7th grade, was so excited. Oh my gosh, I get to sleep in and like not have to go to school. Great. And my youngest, Vivi, who was in 5th grade, was pretty ambivalent. She's like, oh, it's good because I get more time to do my art projects at home, but also I'm going to miss my teacher and my friends, and it's such a good example of like how the same exact situation can lead to different outcomes depending on the story we're telling ourselves about that, right? And you're right, that was like the beginning of a series of events that happened globally, happened in our community and in our own homes, that really tested our resilience, our collective resilience, our individual resilience, and gave us the tools, hopefully, you know, uh, to navigate all this transition and uncertainty and all the new chapters in life.
Yeah, my dinner table was similar, except both boys were probably jumping up and down with excitement. Neither of them were upset about not going to school, but what crushed them was they're both into soccer, and
Mm,
one's playing in college soccer now, and the other is still playing soccer and at a very high level. And the two of them were like, "What are we gonna do?"
yeah.
I had actually just put turf in my backyard and put a couple of little goals in maybe a month prior to the
Mm,
shutdown. And it turned out to be like a neighborhood hangout where
yeah.
a lot of the kids were coming and playing. And you know how just the circumstance and the luck of the draw was that we had done this right before. And I still think back of how impactful some of the decisions we make, that we don't even know
Right.
what the impact will be, and how substantially impactful that was. But their
I
response,
I I
go
mean,
ahead.
I'm gonna just say, like, it's so similar. We had just put in a home gym. We had just finished like getting all the weights and putting in the home gym, and my son is a wrestler, and was also pretty devastated. I mean, wrestling, you're not outdoors, like you're indoors, you're really close to each other. Like, it was canceled completely. And just having the home gym was so critical for him. He's wrestling in college now, and just that was the year that he really was able to like transform his fitness, his body, like reach his goals, but we had no idea. We had just finished that too.
That's awesome. It's also, it was really nice as a family to come together. I think in some ways, excuse me, it's in some ways it was one of those things where everybody got a little closer in a different way.
Mhm.
There was a unique thing where I also notice our kids want to come home so often now, even in college. Like my son just left; he tore his ACL, unfortunately, this
Oh,
year, so he's going through a red shirt sophomore year. So you talk about resilience and those lessons
mhm.
learned. It's very challenging, and I'm leaving him positive messages on his text. He's driving, and hey, I'm super proud of you because you've accomplished all these things. I want you to remember that these are the things that you've accomplished, because it's really easy to get down on ourselves pretty quickly when those things happen. But the close knit family has made it where I've noticed a lot of the families. Um, I don't know how you were, but I was not. I loved coming home, but I didn't love being at home all the time at that age. I
Right.
learned to appreciate it more and more as I got older. But they definitely grew up in a way that was very unique. And so, what a great time for you to be practicing those lessons and learning these things in
I
school.
think, I mean, that time, and even looking back, it's such a great example of how we can hold both pain and struggle and joy and gratitude and some other positive emotions at the same time, right? Research shows that negative and positive emotions are formed in different areas of our brains. And so that's why we are able to hold them both and feel gratitude, feel joy, feel contentment, even when we're going through like a global pandemic and a ton of uncertainty. And in right now, in the environment that we are right now, currently in the world, there's a lot of news that is distressing for people. There's a lot of change and transformation at a very rapid pace at work, and people ask, when I'm teaching, I teach in the Masters of Leadership at BC. I teach a course on like how to apply positive psychology in leadership. And one of the questions that I ask is, is there a role for positive emotions, which is one of the pillars of well-being? Is there a role for positive emotions in times that are of struggle, of uncertainty? And the answer is a resounding yes. There is a role for them. There's a space for them. There's a place for them. They are so important to foster and to enable and to bring out in people, because it does help boost our resilience and our resources. to navigate our internal resources, to navigate the struggle and the uncertainty.
Yeah, so powerful. When we were going through COVID and we shut things down, and it was that first month or so where everything was down, we decided very quickly. I said, I need to get a Zoom together where everybody's connecting every Monday and we have like water cooler talk. And I had started a company in 2016, so we were in a pretty good spot, and we were hiring. I hired 5 people that a couple of them couldn't even start because we lost so much revenue in such a short
Mm,
amount of time that we had to pause things. It was very, very challenging. But one of the ways we overcame that was we started this Monday morning huddle. And Monday morning huddle is at 9 a.m. It starts the day with life. And it was all around just tell me about your weekend. What did you get into? What fun things did you do with your family? Did you go anywhere fun? Was there a challenge or something that you wanted to share? And people started to open up about their lives. And the more the company was opening up about their personal lives, the more people knew the person they were working with, the more they knew their emotion. We had someone who lost a grandchild, and I
mm.
mean the a 5-year-old grandchild, and I'll never forget how everybody was so amazing, and the emotional attachment and connection to them, to their family, to asking about it, to following up on the side. Like it just built a foundation that we're so proud of. The business is one thing, but it's the human connection and the emotion that you're talking about that was so powerful. And we capped it every Friday by doing a wins and challenges. So we made Friday more work related. So it was a
Mhm.
time to celebrate everybody. Tell me something that you accomplished this week that you're super proud of. Who helped you get there? How can we reward everybody? And it really built a special culture. And to this day, even if I'm not there running it, people are still on it and doing it. And they talk about football games and whatever happened over the weekend. It's just so powerful. And I love that part about work. I think people forget that
Ah,
this can be something about work that matters.
what you're saying is like completely music to my ears, and it so tracks with our research on meaningful work and what makes work meaningful. And we found there are 3 C's, and we can unpack that a little in a bit. But it's community, contribution, and challenge. And community is really about this like feeling of belonging, of closeness to the people you work with, of being seen and being able to show up how you really are and say what you really think. And in our study, the most powerful question that predicted a sense of community was, my leader cares about what's happening in my life outside of work. And one of the practices that we teach is exactly what you said, like at the weekly stand up meeting, at a weekly one on one. Just ask, like, let people talk about, don't be so transactional and go right into like, here are the things that are going on this week, who has a question, right? But these first few minutes of connection, of, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Oh my gosh, that football game, I can't believe. And oh, my son had a soccer game and we won the tournament. These little small moments of people sharing what's happening in their lives can really, really build community, as you saw in your real life example, right, in your organization. And it doesn't have to be about deep things. You mentioned the coworker who had lost a grandson. It's amazing that she felt comfortable and supported and able to share that. But it doesn't always have to be about that. It can just be about the small wins and the hike you did over the weekend. But if I'm here and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I went on this hike, and you can say, oh my gosh, I love hiking too. Which hike did you do? And then maybe the next time we're hiking together, right? And these relationships really evolve over time, and they're so critical because community is about like who we do it with. We do the work and we do it together, we rely on each other, we need to collaborate, and it really matters when we know a little more about each other.
When you go through and you build the trust, I think what we saw happen is that not only did they know that leadership cared, but they knew that everybody alongside them cared. And so
Exactly.
what started out as kind of sharing maybe the shallow things you did over the weekend, or someone that did something big and they would only share, oh, I went to go see Messi play soccer this weekend, and that's a big thing, and you share it. It went from that to I'm really proud of myself. I started a 12-week workout thing and I've lost 27 pounds, and people are sharing this in the group. And then we started a text chain, and the text chain is just celebratory things. So the first day of school, when the kids go, and now, like a lot of the, like us parents that have college kids, you're getting a random picture. You're not getting the one where they're posed with the what they want to be when they grow up. And
Right.
but you're along for the ride, and you build enough trust in each other that even when someone moves on, we find that they still stay connected and share some of the things with us along their life journey. And to me, that makes purposeful work, meaningful work. It falls right into what your research has shown. And I guess it's so reciprocal to families as well. It's no different. It's the same thing. That safe space people feel to get there. Walk us through the 3 C's. I know we talked about community, but let's give our listeners a chance to kind of unpack that a little bit.
Sure. And before I do that, I'm going to take a quick step back and actually define meaningful work and maybe debunk some of the myths, if that's okay.
Please.
Because we often hear one of the biggest questions we get is like, are meaningful work and purpose or purpose driven work the same thing? And we hear them being used interchangeably. And so that's a good place to start. And so meaningful work and purpose are different. They are not, purpose is a part of meaningful work, but it's not enough to make work meaningful. Okay. So purpose falls under the second C, the contribution C. And when you think about all the investment, excuse me, that companies have made in having a purpose, or start with why, and like, why do you exist, and what is the impact you want to create. That's really important, and it works really well to attract the right talent, the people who care about the same things you care about, that want to work for that mission. But once they get in, and once they start working day to day, and they're responding to emails, and they're going from meeting to meeting, and they're working on the presentation and the spreadsheet and all those tasks, it's really easy to lose sense of, how is it that what I'm doing ties to that purpose, right? And so that's where contribution comes in. The practices in that C really help us connect the work that we do to the impact that it has. And one of the places where it impacts is the organization's purpose, but it can even be on the impact that it has to our coworkers, our colleagues, our customers. So it can be like a smaller impact too. In your practice on Fridays of sharing wins and thanking who helped you, that's a great way to highlight contribution. And then another, so then the way we define meaningful work is really around the 3 C's. And this is data that emerged from our study. So it's not like we made up this definition. This came from our qualitative and quantitative study, but it's work that builds community, helps you contribute to something that matters, and challenges you to learn and grow. So community, contribution, and challenge being the 3 C's. And then another way that people confuse meaningful work is thinking that it is reserved for certain professions. So, well, you can only find meaningful work if you are, a healthcare worker or a teacher, or if you work for a nonprofit or in social justice. And while those jobs tend to be more purposeful, we found that every job can and I believe should be meaningful, because meaningful work is a lot less about what you do, but it's about how you experience what you do. And so in our experience of work, we can have moments of contribution, of community, and of challenge every day. And so we talked about community, we talked about contribution. So I'll double click on challenge, which is really about having someone who believes in you, right? We all need somebody who believes in us, who sees our strengths and sees our potential, sometimes even before we see it in ourselves, right? And then can give us opportunities to develop that potential, to stretch, to use our strengths, and then support us when we're doing the hard thing. And so Bob Quinn, who is at U Michigan, at the Center for Positive Organizations. He describes it as one leader having your hand on your back, or someone, it could be a leader, colleague, right? Somebody, a mentor, having your one hand on your back, kind of pushing you to the best version of yourself. But the other hand is under your arm, kind of supporting you as you navigate the trickiest terrain. So it's that combination of like the push and the support that creates this meaningful challenge.
It's so similar to parenting in
Oh my
that
gosh.
you have so often you that it's the balance between the belief in somebody in belief in your child, kind of pushing them forward, and then while you're also supporting them, but just being careful not to support them too much as they go through
Yes.
that challenging or resilient activity that they have to get through.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that because as a parent, when I was doing this research and we started with the qualitative study, so I was, we were hearing these really remarkable, powerful stories of people describing a time when, or and all of that. And all I could think about was, oh, yeah, that's exactly like parenting. And I actually went and Googled like pa- parental style leadership, and that's actually a thing that exists because so many of the lessons, and when we were digging into the research and developing the frameworks and the tools like for leaders to apply this, we created what we call the zone of possibility matrix. So it's a matrix that goes from like high expectations, low expectations, and then high support and low support. And so the zone of possibility is where high expectations meets high support. And there are models of parenting that are the exact same. It's authoritative parenting, I think, which kind of tracks with the zone of possibility, not authoritarian, and
Right.
not there's like complacent, there's all kinds, but the this kind of parenting is very similar to this kind of leadership.
Well, I think the commonality that you find when you're leading in parenting is also in that selfless leadership. When there's so many times as a parent that you're doing something that sometimes feels um, it like it's not best for you,
Right.
but it's best for them. So, I actually left a message this morning as my son was going back because I was pressing him to go back a little earlier. And so I left a little voice message as he went back and I said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, I press for you to go back, not because I want you to leave. I hate it when you leave. But the reality is, it's not about what's best for me. As you go through this journey of getting healthy, of being around your friends, of being engulfed in school, having us around it can feel very comfortable, but it's not always what I believe is best for you. So I think it comes across sometimes like dad doesn't want you home. That is
Mm,
the opposite of what I'm trying to accomplish. So I said, you can take it how you want, but it is not how it comes across. I would rather you be here with me, but that's not my job as a parent. And I literally left that message this morning because I think even with my wife, sometimes it comes across that, I know that I got to push him. He's a boy. I got to push him a little bit sometimes to do the uncomfortable because we have a very comfortable life
mhm.
and, and a comfortable house and a wonderful mom. And I hope a decent dad. And so you have those things. And, but I think one of the things that I try to do that I don't know that I grew up with in the same way was kind of the explanation, even when it with the extra point to just say it. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like I think the generation before us just assumed you knew it.
right.
And I just don't assume anything. So I don't
No.
leave it. And I leave a voice text on purpose because what they don't want to do is talk back to you. They
Right.
don't want that uncomfortable conversation, but they don't mind listening to it. And I got a heart on the message, which
Oh,
was a
good.
big positive. And then I know, I
Yeah,
know, like
yeah,
that's all I needed. That's
yeah,
all he needed.
yeah. It's so funny that you say that because I think, and I know from the research that is a missing piece of the puzzle. There's studies on that started with middle school kids on how to give feedback in a way that unlocks best performance, right? And so they had kids write an essay, and then they had the teachers grade the essay. In one group, and they had them grade the essay like really harshly, like giving like a lot of feedback, a lot of red markings on the essay. And then one group got a note with the essay that said, I'm giving you this feedback. So, I'm giving you these comments so you have feedback on your essay. And the experiment group got a note that said, I'm giving you this feedback because I have very high expectations of you and I believe that you can reach them. The high expectations group performed a lot better on their revision. They put more effort in, so they worked harder on it. They tried more times, and then their performance really increased. And that has become known as the magical feedback. And so, whether in parenting or as a leader or as a colleague, if you say to somebody, I'm giving you this assignment, this is hard, but I believe you can do it. I'm giving this assignment because I see your strengths and you're 70% of the way there, and I can help you with the next 30%. I'm here for you. Or, I found this class, and if you take this class, you'll be 100% of the way there, or whatever it is. But it's exactly what you did. It's like, I'm wanting you to leave, not because I don't want you around, but it's what's best for you. You're ready for this. It's what you need right now, right? It really makes a difference.
Well, the expectations, you made me remember a story in high school AP English where I wrote a paper, and it was probably my second or third paper in a row, and it was C plus. And I kept getting, the teacher would hand out the papers and he would give me a C plus. The second or third one I got, and I looked at him and I said, this isn't a C plus paper. I just looked right. I was like, there's no way this is a C plus paper. And he goes, it's a C plus paper for you. And I remember going, what is that? I said, what does that mean? He goes, this is a C plus paper for you. And you know what it means. This is not your best work. So I'm grading you as if I know you can do more. And I saw that teacher riding his bike in my neighborhood during COVID, funny enough. And he was outside, and my neighbor and I both went to high school together and had him. And we were talking about all kinds of stuff. It was like one of those elongated mailbox conversations because there was nothing else to waste your time on that you normally would. And I said, you graded me so tough. And he was like, well, I guess I graded you right, huh? Your expectations were too low on yourself and I needed to raise them. And so I think that that's a great feedback lesson. And I'm glad research supports it because I like that lift up, that helping people
I guess
just
the
know they have it in
question
them.
is, Scott, did you put in more effort in the subsequent essays, and did you get your grade up?
Yeah, the professor in you wants to know.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
yeah. I did get my grade up, and I did try harder. And when I went to college, I remember writing papers, and I got to the point where when I would study a subject, how you'd have to decide what to write on the topic, I would always research two topics. I would have all the data for two topics, and I would start to write both of them. I'd write the initial starting point of the paper, maybe the first paragraph and a half of one, and I'd write the second one, and I would see which one flowed. Which one did I feel more comfortable with? I had it all. And then I would walk in and give all the second paper that I wasn't going to write to my roommate, who then used all of it to write his paper. So it did make me better. It definitely made me better.
You did. You had that little voice in your head, right?
I did.
You
I think
became the voice in your head for writing.
Yeah, I think I do a lot. We do a lot with sports, and I've coached a lot in my life. My boys, one's a Division I player, I was saying before, with soccer, and my other one plays for an academy, and moved away at 14 to live and play. And I just feel like all these things are so correlated. Whether it's when you're trying to get the best out of someone and you're trying to also help them see it and do it on their own, that's really how you find that happy median. It's not about what I think is best for you. It's about what you think is best for you. But if I can give you the nudge, it's so much more powerful. And
also like to even open your eyes to what's possible, because sometimes the stories we're telling ourselves, like we're staying in this box, like, oh, I'll do this when, like, I'm not ready for that yet, or whatever. And then when somebody comes and says, no, like, try this thing, like you're ready. Like I see potential in you. I saw you did that. You did this one thing that was really effective. And if you do that thing here, like, and so having somebody that can open up your vision of what's possible, I think can be so powerful.
What made you write the books? I mean, you've done two books, highly successful, quality works.
Yeah.
What kind of what positioned you or pushed you to kind of put yourself out there like that?
That's a really good question. I think mostly what drove me, because it's really hard writing a book, right? And there are moments. I mean, this one I wrote with my friend and research partner and co-author Wes Adams, and there were a lot of moments that we were like, "Oh my god, this is so hard!" Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And like by the time you have to rewrite and write, and it's just not landing, and you're like, oh, I need a story that illustrates that, and you have to go back to your trove of research and all of that. So it is a hard process. And I think ultimately what kept me going both with the first one and this one is the belief that I can have a real impact, right? I tried to write the book in a way that is kind of fun to read. This book is filled with stories, and wanted to write it. I mean, it's not a novel, right? It's a business book, but it's so built on stories that it becomes easy to read, but also to open your eyes again to the word possibility, to take you from what is currently, people perceive work as drudgery or something you have to do, and that's kind of the reality of what it is, to open our minds to what is possible. These stories in the book are all real examples of leaders, organizations, colleagues who are doing things a little bit differently. And oftentimes, if we can show people that a different way exists, people want to take that way. They want, if you can hold their hand on how to get there. And if we could make work meaningful for just one person in one organization, like that's already a real impact. And so, I mean, that's why, yeah, I think that's why I wrote this book. And it was new research. I had something new to say, a new point of view that to me felt exciting and fresh. And so I thought, let's share it with the world.
Well, one of my favorite people to follow wrote on the back of your book, read meaningful work today and watch the morale in your company improve, Arthur Brooks. And Arthur Brooks does some great research and phenomenal um, books, and wrote a ton in, I think, the Atlantic during COVID, and got very popular.
Mhm.
And but obviously, whether it's Adam Grant or Arthur Brooks or any of the people that have seen how valuable that the work you're doing is, it's great to see that it was impact that kind of pushed you to put these things out in the world. And I think that seems to be a common ground on this show. So many people that are accomplishing big things, and I use air quotes when I say high performers, because it is what it is. I mean, high performers is such a wide statement. Anybody doing something meaningful is performing at a very high level, but there tends to be this commonality built around impact, something that goes beyond themselves for the good of the community, outside of just themselves. It's not ego driven. Very seldom do I have someone on this show that is like, oh, I just knew I was the best in this space and I had to write something. It's just not been, it's happened, but it's just not been very normal.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me because I think when you undertake something hard, something big like writing a book, it can't just be it can't be about you. I don't think it's big enough for you to kind of slog through the effort, right? Um and work becomes so much more meaningful, and meaning fuels motivation. For you to have the motivation to see a long-term project like that through, it has to be about the impact. And like, why would it matter to write a book if nobody was going to read it? I wouldn't write it. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
I also believe if we can go full circle back to positive psychology. So Marty Seligman, who founded the field of positive psychology, has told us, everybody who's a scholar and kind of researcher or works in the field, that his moonshot vision, his big goal with the field, is to have 51% of the population in the world flourishing by 2051. And we're not there yet. And like since COVID, we've dipped. And I think we're like in the 20s. I don't know for sure right now off the top of my head, but the last number I remember seeing is like 25 or 26%. So we're about halfway there. And it takes a lot of effort, right, to move the needle so broadly at a global scale. And so truly believe, I fundamentally believe that our biggest lever for impacting well being is our workplace, right? We spend more waking hours at work than anywhere else. And what we experience at work, we bring home with us. There is research on emotional contagion that shows that, our levels of well-being and happiness spreads up to 3 degrees of separation. So when we are at work, if we experience meaning at work, we bring that home with us. That impacts our friends, our family, our community, and it can really help us reach that moonshot vision of 51%. Our workplaces are one of the last places that people from different backgrounds, with different points of view, different experiences, still come together to collaborate and do hard things. And so, if we can impact that experience at a local level, we can spread well being at a much higher level.
That's great. Yeah, well, I'm certainly hopeful as well, and that's a phenomenal vision to have 51%. I also like to see more and more people practicing positive psychology over the traditional forms, just because I love the ability to change the way we speak about how we're made and how we're set up. I mean, I always go back to the attention deficit hyperactive disorder, where people have disorders versus creative thinking and fast
Mhm.
minds. And we are all made a certain way, and leveraging and utilizing that towards the talent, finding strengths. We've always used personality assessments in our office, but we don't use them just for you as an individual to learn about yourself. We use it for how to best communicate with each other. So if
Mm.
somebody tends to be more analytical, it's good that you maybe lead with some data or lead with some numbers. If somebody is a results oriented individual, what's the bottom line, and then work your way backwards. And we've always had that mentality to celebrate how everybody's made differently, and
Yeah.
that diversity, and how we think differently, because that makes us better. It's not about repeating individuals. It's about kind of using our unique abilities to help each other accomplish a greater goal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree fully. We, as humans, have such a strong negativity bias, right? We tend to focus on the negative much more strongly than we notice or focus on the positive. And it takes real intention and real effort for us to shift. It can be done, but we have to work hard on it. And I just want to be clear that it's not a toxic positivity view of denying the negative or denying the suffering or the struggle. But I think we talked about earlier, both can coexist. What we don't want is to get stuck in the struggle, in the suffering, in the negativity bias that narrows our focus and puts the blinders on. When we can look for the positive, find the gratitude, search for hope, we start broadening our perspective. We start connecting with each other more, and it helps us, it gives us the resilience to navigate the struggle.
What are you seeing with students today? So you're in the classroom on a regular basis. You see the generational changes. You've raised children in the same generation. So, you've had the pleasure of seeing that. What are you seeing of this next generation and their goals towards meaningful work?
So, this generation that's entering the workforce now, or in college, right, or late high school, they are really demanding meaningful work. They are much more vocal about their expectations that work be meaningful than any other generation that came before them. And I think, and maybe I'm very biased because I work in that space, but I think that's a great thing. Because what the research actually shows is that every generation cares about meaningful work and defines it very similarly. Like we all want to feel connected to the people we work with. We all want to contribute to something that matters. We all want to learn, grow, and keep mastering new skills. But Gen Z is coming in and making that known. Like, they're not willing to put up with some of the stuff we put up with when we were growing up at work. They want it now. They want their experience of work to feel meaningful, and I think that's great, because I think that's changing how we work, how we create experiences of work that, and the beautiful thing that we didn't even talk about is, meaningful work is not only great for individuals, it has a lot of benefits for individuals, right? From our well-being, our sense of fulfillment, our sense of meaning in life, our happiness levels, all that. But it's also really great for organizations. People stay longer, they work harder, their productivity increases, their engagement increases. And so all the metrics that leaders care about, even financial returns, like stock prices, are higher when people are experiencing meaning every day at work. So it's truly like a win-win strategy. And the fact that Gen Z is loudly demanding that, I think is just going to shape, hopefully, I just got the like, well, what happens with AI? And we don't really know yet. But
this is what I was thinking about as you were talking, is
yeah.
I was actually thinking about, I went to college in 96. So I'm 47 years old. And when I got to college, I remember intro to email. Like, it
Mhm.
was like a blinking screen,
Right.
and I could send my mom an email at work, and I learned how to do it. By the time I left, you could plug in to anywhere on campus and have access. Now, my first job, I was dialing up. I had to have two phone lines, one to call out and one to dial up. And then within a couple of years, everything changed. And I think what's really interesting is, I think we're in the next revolution
Mhm.
of change. And this generation is very similar to what I think I went to school as, where it was the precipice, the very beginning of that shift. And those that accepted it and went with it learned to use it in a very, very positive way.
Yeah.
But I hope, that's what I hope for. AI is so unique in that it does a lot of the work for you,
Right.
but there's still things that, I mean, I keep AI files of ideas that I have, where I will build a business in an evening, put it in a parking lot, leave it there, and then when something pops up, I'll pull it back out and rebuild and bring it to somebody. I mean,
Yeah.
so powerful.
It is, and you're right to like parallel it with other technological innovations we've had. I think the difference here is that this is much more transformative at a much faster pace and a much bigger scale than anything we've seen before. And so when we were writing the book, and it was just kind of starting to, like, large language models were kind of starting to become infused in our daily lives, I think the view was really hopeful. The view that we put in the book, in the chapter we called The Future of Meaningful Work, and we're exploring AI. And we reached out to many thought leaders, including Adam Grant, Arthur Brooks, and others, to think about, like, what happens to meaningful work when there are multiple generations at work? What happens to meaningful work when AI comes in and we're working with AI agents, alongside humans? And so, and this was what we turned in the manuscript a year and a half ago, right? And so maybe 2 years ago at this point. The view is really hopeful. It'll be great because we can have AI take some of the tasks, the mundane administrative tasks that we don't like to do, or we don't want to spend our time and energy and creativity doing, and it frees us up to do more meaningful work. And I think now what we're seeing is that, like, maybe we're actually outsourcing some of the creative, more meaningful work to AI. And are we becoming more of like prompt engineers, where, and it's too soon to tell. And I'm doing a deep dive into it now and interviewing leaders and stuff, because Wes and I are writing an article for HBR on this. And so I'll know more over the next few weeks. But in the classroom, we are encouraging the use of AI in different ways. Obviously, not like have AI write this paper with this prompt. No, but we've totally redesigned the syllabus this year so that the assignments are more meaningful, more applied, not so much writing a paper. It's much more personal. And so I think, I think you have to evolve with it, and you have to put guardrails in, and you have to allow the students to experiment with it and try different things and see what works and what doesn't work. We all should be experimenting a lot because it's just going to be a huge part of our day-to-day work experience.
Yeah, it's got to be a very challenging time in academia because of the fact that it's thinking and doing so much that there is a challenge that people become lazy with their creativity.
Yeah.
But I tend to believe that connection is so powerful that in some ways some things will be offset to the AI and the computers, but in others, it's sort of like nowadays the phone, you can feel like so many people and yet still feel completely disconnected and not feel a part of something. And so we see the value of connection increasing, not one-on-one connection increasing, not decreasing. And you mentioned something about the workforce, which I think is really powerful. I'm in the financial services industry. I started as an advisor 23 years ago, built a business, then built an enterprise, and now I do M&A across a multitude of financial services practices. And we basically, the average age of an advisor in our space is 62 years old.
Wow.
Well, there's that for every 8 advisors that are retiring, there are only 3 coming in. And there's a major gap in 100,000+ people needed in the workforce. I'm sure AI will probably take away 1 or 2 of those individuals, but for the most part, there's a gap. And you hit it on the biggest reason the gap exists is because how difficult is it for a 58 to 62-year-old to train someone who just left your class and is coming into the workforce? Everything is slow, outdated, antiquated. It doesn't even make sense. It's like your parents trying to work 3 remotes and you're like, can we just organize this into one?
Right.
Let's cut the cable and use Hulu or YouTube TV.
Right.
Come on, mom, we could do it. And
we don't need a landline anymore. What are you talking about?
Right. Who has a landline anymore? Like, why? And so these are the things that you see, but I see it firsthand. And so I've had to focus not just on the mergers and acquisitions side of the industry, but also on the next gen side, because you can't have one without the other. So it's almost exactly like we started this conversation where we were talking about you're kind of believing in it and you're pushing people forward, but you're also holding up and lifting just a little bit for support. So it's the same. The support is the next gen. The belief is that you can exit at some point in time and it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting industry where that is very relevant today.
I didn't know about this at all, that the average age is 62, and that's fascinating. And it made me think of Chip Conley when he was brought in to Airbnb. So he had a background in hospitality, boutique hotels, had done really well, had written a few books, and Airbnb brought him in to help them kind of grow and do some new business ventures and all of that. And so he was much older. I think he was like in his 60s, and they were young, 20, 30-year-old something startup. And so Chip Conley wrote a book and started a modern elder academy based on this experience of like mutual mentorship. He came in thinking like, okay, I'll be the expert on mentor, but he learned so much from the young founders, and I think it's kind of a similar situation where while the older advisor is training them in some practices and experience and all of that they can only get maybe through apprenticeship and trial and error, maybe the young ones are like, wait a minute, we don't need 3 remotes. Like, let's just do 1 remote. And I think there needs to be a mutuality there where both are willing to learn and grow.
Yeah, it's what we see the differential in the generations most is when it's the time to speak to someone and the time to text or email someone.
Mm-hmm.
And the younger generation text and emails way too often, and the older generation believes you have to constantly talk to someone. And so it's the happy median research shows that in the video, like you can send a video and have a connection, and after about 2 weeks, the person doesn't remember if they saw you face to face or they watched your video. And so these are things that really make a difference, that can be impactful, but you have to kind of guide into it. And
Yeah,
so our industry numbers are unique, and it's one of those things that this type of thing is very powerful to understand the power of meaningful work, to understand the impact to your company, and how generationally it can really make a difference for the people you serve, your clients, or anybody that any industry that you're in, really.
absolutely. I mean, when we look at generational differences within meaningful work, we see that, like I said, every generation cares about meaningful work. Every generation defines it similarly. And the differences that emerge aren't necessarily generational differences, they're more like career stage differences. So it tracks with generations, but not always, right? So if you are somebody who left the workforce and are coming back at an entry level, your experience is going to be similar to a Gen Z who's an entry level, and it's slight differences. So the Gen Z cohort, the entry level cohort, people that are just starting out, care about all three C's, but mostly about challenge. They want somebody who's investing in their career, who's investing in their growth, who's investing in their learning. Somebody in our Gen X generation cares more about impact at this point. Like, what's the legacy we're leaving behind? How are we making people's lives better, the world better, and so it's slight differences, but we still care. I mean, I'm 47, just like you. I still want to be connected to the people I work with. I still want to call Wes and talk about his weekend, and I care about my students, and the connection that we have there. And I care about challenge too. I'm always learning. I'm always reading. I always want to get better and do hard things.
Well, the three C's really matter to me too. I couldn't agree more. And at this stage and where we are, and we're at like the edge of that Gen X and the beginning of
Right.
the millennial, where we don't really fit in all the way with
Right.
either, but it's a beautiful place to be on that
Wait, the
verge.
millennials are 47, 46 already. That's
Uh,
crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean,
That is crazy.
and baby boomers, are now outnumbered by millennials. I mean, the
Wow.
generation numbers are very unique. And we came up at a time where you were a rookie at whatever you were doing for at least a decade, because baby boomers were as far as you could see. They were in
Right.
front of you in every role. So just think about the impact it's going to have in academia.
Yeah.
As people, I don't know what the average age in education is, but I would imagine it tends to be older as well. And you might see a major shift or change there as well at some point in time. Now, the pensions maybe help to push
Right.
people along because they know they have the check coming in. But listen, I loved learning about your mission, and learning about the three C's, and the conversation that we've had today has been valuable. Tell people how to find more of you, and you and Wes's work as it comes out, because obviously you're working on some cool things as well.
Yes. So the best place to find us is on our website, which is makeworkmeaningful.com. That is where we have a free assessment that you can take to see where do you fall in each of the C's. Like, if you're going to invest in one of them, where should you start? And it's free. We also have a bunch of free tools and resources, worksheets that you can use in your next team meeting. Everything that's in the book is there for free that you can download and put to practice right away. And then we're both super active on social media. So LinkedIn, Instagram, where we're sharing kind of the latest research. What are we finding out more? Or stories of application, and our point, we share our point of view on new and coming trends like the great lock-in and things like that.
Well, it's super interesting and very viable. And I'm glad that you're not only doing it to the students, but you're also teaching your own family these things and practicing on them as well, so they can continue to learn and grow and be more resilient. Good luck to your kids in school. And I really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck to your boys too.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.